introduce myself. My name is Tracy Sullivan. I'm the Education Leader of the Big History Institute, and I manage the Australian arm of the Big History Project here in Australia. The aim of today is an information day and an implementation day. So I know that many of you here are here who have not encountered the Big History Project before and are exploring it as an option for your schools. And there are some of you who have already started teaching Big History and are here to learn more about the updated site and integrating further into your classrooms. So today's for both of you. And also what we've done in the structure of today is we've left time in each of the sessions. I know that many of you, when you come to professional development days and information days like this, you're overwhelmed with a lot of information and there's not much time for absorption and to explore. So what we've done in the program today is left time for that. So after these sessions, you'll find that there are participant activities on the program, and that's time for you to explore the resource, think about what you've learned, think about what you've seen and how you'll be able to implement that into your school and take that back and work with those resources. Today we're also fortunate enough to have presenting with us Roxanne Pritchard and Chloe Simons from Curriculum Services from the Tasmanian Department of Education, who'll be doing some work with you looking at the Australian curriculum. And also we have Judy Adnam from the Faculty of Education here, who works in history method. So she'll also be working with us as well. So we're very happy to have them with us here today as well. So let us move forward. So just to give you an idea of how the Big History Project works in relation to the Big History Institute, the Big History Institute here at Macquarie University, we lead and manage the Big History Project in Australia and work to help in terms of professional development, in terms of supporting schools, in terms of advocating for teachers and helping curriculum authorities disseminate and implement Big History Project and Big History more broadly within the Australian and the global context more broadly. So that's the relationship between the Big History Project and the Big History Institute as it operates within Australia. Now, in terms of what is Big History, when we're looking at Big History, what we're really looking at is a unified attempt to understand the history of the universe from the Big Bang until now, and exploring these as themes and patterns that can help us understand the world we live in today. So it's really a story that's looking at that story from the Big Bang until now, but to help us understand and our students to understand what's happening in the world we live in, and them as a part of that world we live in. And it's an interdisciplinary course. So I always say when I'm talking to teachers about this that, and we're in curriculums where time is of such essence, and curriculum time especially is of such essence. This isn't about trying to usurp time in a curriculum. It's about using this course as a way to look across those courses, look across the curriculum, and think about how this course can enhance learning in other areas and in other disciplines that students are using. So what is the Big History Project and what is the Big History Institute, okay, along with that? Now, it's a collaborative effort to create course for teachers everywhere. In terms of the project, it's a complete free online curriculum. All assessments, all lesson plans and all content is housed within that site, and it is all free and it is all online, and it will be in perpetuity. It provides easy access to the course materials for teachers and for students. Now, within that and aligned to the Big History Institute, we're also providing training and professional development opportunities for teachers. There is absolutely no point in having a wonderful, beautiful resource there if there is no training and support for teachers, okay? You of all people know that, and we understand that. And one of the reasons that we understand that is that from the very outset of this project, it was believed and it was taken into consideration that without teacher input into the creation of this site, it's not going to be the best that it can. So we have the belief that this is your site. This is your curriculum. You own it. We take your feedback, we take your input, and we take your insight to make it better, to make it work for you and for your students, because you are the ones that know how it works. You are the ones that know what works, and we need to hear that from you. And we need to help you to be able to do that, providing you the best support that we can. We also, and this is through the project and through more broadly the Big History Institute, want to create a community of big historians to help keep the course fresh, impactful and connected, okay? And you are part of that community, an empowered community. And we're really committed to growing that community of big historians and using your input, your knowledge and your expertise to make this course and what it stands for students and teachers better. And also an advocacy body, a body to support schools, to support educational authorities to implement this course. So we understand that there are hurdles that are in place that you need to go through to get courses like this implemented in your schools, such as mapping to curriculums, such as dealing with Australian curriculum standards, such as working to fit it into curriculum structures within your schools. We're here to help you do that. We're here to give you as much support as we can to get that done for you in your schools. So that's part of what we're here to do as well. So the goal. What is the goal? What's the goal of the project and of the Institute more broadly? We want to challenge students to explore the relationship between events over time, learn how to synthesise information, develop their key critical thinking skills, enhance reading, writing and presentation. Now, what we feel is this will not only help their discipline-specific work, but understand what's going on for them within society more broadly and impact their future potential, okay? And I want to say that again. Key critical thinking skills, synthesise knowledge and information, and enhance their reading, writing and presentation skills, okay? So that's our key focus. So where are we currently? What's happening to date? We have 106 schools in Australia currently teaching Big History, 121 teachers, over 3,300 students teaching in Australia. Now we also have over 600 schools engaging with the resources beyond that. Now that growth's taken place in 3 years. 3 years ago we started with 2 pilot schools. We're mapped to the Australian curriculum in science, history and English, and we're going to work with that a little later on and show you exactly where you can find those curriculum documents. We're in General Capabilities Level 6 and the cross-curriculum priorities. We're also in the process of mapping to geography. We're also mapped to the New South Wales Australian curriculum in English, English, science and history. And we're also working to map in geography as well. And hopefully in 2016 we'll be working to have some level of advanced standing for any first year course taken in Big History at Macquarie University, okay? Which is a huge plus for students. So what does the course look like? I'm going to spend some time with you working through the course, looking through the materials, but I want you to get a clear idea that there is a distinct structure to how this course works. We were committed when we started this course to work in pilot. There was no idea that we were going to just throw this out there. We started in pilot and we started with students and we started with teachers, a small group, because there needed to be a firm pedagogical underpinning of how this worked and a firm structure for it to work with. Starts as a hierarchy, big picture questions. Under that, we have essential skills, core concepts. Then we have course outcomes. Underpinning that, we have unit outcomes. So the big picture questions. What are the big picture ideas that students are going to come to when they come to Big History? How did we get here? How has the universe and life within it grown more complex over 13, and that should say 0.8 billion years? Things change pretty quickly in Big History through the process of collective learning. How do we know what we know about the past? How can we judge claims about the past? Why does what we know change over time? And this is the big one, I think, and really one that's interesting for students, because as we know, today's student, they're pragmatic. They're really pragmatic. What difference does it make? Why does any of this matter? Okay, that's a big one for kids today. Then we move down and we have a set of essential skills and core concepts that underpin this course. So we have 3 essential skills, and I'm going to go through these in a little more detail as we go through. Thinking across scale, okay? and more specifically, perspective across scale. And what do we mean by that? Integrating multiple disciplines and interdisciplinarity. Okay? I think you'll all agree, and you'll see it in curriculum structures, students take their knowledge in chunks. They go from English, they go from maths, they go from history, they go from science, and they see their information in that way. They see it in chunks. What we do in big history is they start to see how information combines across those disciplines, and they seem to see how it connects in multiple ways. And then they can take those connections and start using them in their other disciplines. So they'll go and they'll say, okay, I learnt that I can see why, I can look at a star chart, and then I can take that star chart and then I can see how that relates to a periodic table. And then I can take that periodic table and see how that relates to a narrative text. And they can make those connections. So they're not just reading across disciplines, they're reading across multiple texts. Okay? So there are multiple literacies involved in there. And then they can take those connections back into their other classes. The other thing, making and testing claims. Okay, I'll go into this a bit more in a little more detail. And this is about critical and visible thinking, okay? So it's not just about critical thinking, okay? We talk about critical thinking, but to really be critical about what you're thinking, you've got to be visible in that thinking. So you've got to be able to see the process of that thinking taking place. And through the idea of claim testers here, we bring those two together when we work it through the curriculum. And I'll talk to you a bit about that a little bit more. And then we have core concepts that we work through in big history that help us. And the idea of the core concepts is it leads students through the curriculum, so it makes sense of this huge amount of content for them, but it also helps them to scaffold and work through these essential skills. So we have the idea of thresholds and increase in complexity, collective learning, and then origin stories. And I'll talk a little more about that. So let's start with these concepts. Modern scientific origin story. The underpinning concept of big history, or one of them, is this idea of origin story. All peoples have had these eternal questions. Who am I? Where did we come from? How did we get here? Where are we going? And you'll see here we have different images from different cultures' origin stories. Now, what big history is posing us is a modern day scientific version of this origin story. And that's what we're saying big history is. And throughout this course, and you'll see in one of the early units, students are given these different origin stories to look at. They're asked to compare them. What are the similar features of these different origin stories, and what's similar and different about this modern day version of this origin story that we have today? So there's this idea of big history being a modern day scientific origin story. All right? Not better, not worse than any other, just a modern day scientific version of an origin story. Thresholds and complexities. Now, this is a really, really important one, because whenever I present this to teachers and I say, okay, we're going to learn about what happened as a narrative, an historical narrative, over 13.8 billion years to year 9 kids. And it's like, oh my God, okay, how on earth is a year 9 student supposed to make sense of all this content, okay? And it's through this idea of thresholds and complexity that we chart this for them. So here's this idea. 200 million years ago, 2 million years, 100 million years after the Big Bang, we have this idea here. You've got first stars appearing. Universe is extremely simple, okay? Hydrogen and helium atoms. Extreme simplicity. 13.8 billion years later. This is from Eric Beinhocker. More than 1 billion distinct items are being traded in New York City. Hundreds of times more than the estimated numbered species on Earth, made possible by the integration of almost 7 billion humans into a single global network of staggering complexity. So what we have in big history is the story of how did we get from this to this, okay? That's an amazing story. And it's also for year 9 kids, when you think about it, a pretty daunting story with a whole load of content. So how do we scaffold that? How do we structure that? And through that, we have this idea of thresholds of complexity, all right? Thresholds of increasing complexity. So we have 8 in big history. Big Bang, stars light up, chemical elements, Earth and the solar system, life, agriculture, collective learning, and the modern revolution. And when you see the site, you can see the site is structured on these, okay? And within these, we have this idea of Goldilocks conditions, or the ingredients for these, and in a threshold. So we have ingredients, and I've chosen collective learning here, powerful brains, versatile symbolic language, plus Goldilocks conditions, interactions between individuals equal a new form of complexity, okay? So when we put it together, and here we have a new species, Homo sapiens, that use collective learning, connect with each other in new and different ways, adapt to their environment, and pass information from generation to generation, okay? So that is how we can scaffold this journey that students are going to take through these thresholds of increasing complexity. And that forms the pedagogical narrative that underpins this story for students. Next core concept, collective learning. Now, this is a thought experiment that David Christian does sometimes when we're thinking about collective learning. Think about everything that you have inside your head, every thought, every idea. Think about if you never had contact with another human being, how much of that would be there? That's the power that you get from collective learning. This idea that we as human beings, as Homo sapiens, have the capacity to share knowledge, to learn from that, to adapt, okay, and to accelerate change and grow from that. And this is a concept that we run through in Big History from the start to the finish. And this is a story of the power of collective learning. And we use examples to run through this and demonstrate this through the course. Not only the fact that we look at that as an idea in Unit 5, or Unit 6, when we look at the rise of Homo sapiens, who have this power, and then we look again with the advent of writing, so then we're capable of storing knowledge and what that means in terms of acceleration. But also we use examples that base this whole story, this modern day scientific origin story, on the power of collective learning to facilitate that. So we look at an example of the models of the universe, or our modern understanding of the universe. The idea that we look at, we went from Copernicus to Newton to Hubble, and how building on the knowledge of others has led to our understanding of the universe today. Then we take another example, say plate tectonics. The idea that Wegener had that idea, and it wasn't until through the collective learning of others that they came up with the evidence to actually prove that theory, to come up with the evidence to prove that his theory was true. So constantly students are being faced with this idea of collective learning and given examples of that throughout the course as a core concept. Now let's look at the skills. Scale. Now this is a really interesting one, and this is really interesting in the context of Big History, and really interesting in terms of perspective. Now often when we think of perspective in terms of human perspective, our perspective, personal perspective. We don't often think of perspective in terms of physical and spatial scale. What can we see at different scales? What do we see when we look at something close up as compared to when we look at something far away? What do we see when we look at something within a short period of time as opposed to when we see it on a vast period of time? Okay? And this is something that we're not used to doing. We're used to perspective being linked to our personal perspective, not linked to time and space. Okay? And in Big History, students are being asked to move between these perspectives of scale all the time and very quickly. From the tiny fraction of a second to 13.8 billion years. From something as small as an atom to as giant as the universe. And what are they seeing? What are they seeing in those different spaces? And here's the most essential skill of all in Big History, and the most important pedagogical tool that underpins everything. This idea of claim testing. And it fills in this idea of critical and visible thinking that underpins the entire course and is the most important thing that we have. Now, built into Big History, we have 4 claim testers: intuition, authority, logic, and evidence. So intuition, what's your gut tell you? If someone comes to you with a claim of knowledge. Now, in Big History, these are not claims of knowledge you'll just meet in Big History. There are claims of knowledge they'll meet in all of their subjects. They'll meet them everywhere they go, and they'll be walking down the street. They'll ask someone for directions. Do I turn left? Do I turn right? Why do I believe this person? Do I believe them because my gut reaction tells me, and my intuition tells me that I should believe them? Is it authority? because I believe that, because the person has experience in the field, that they're trustworthy. Logic, because it makes sense due to some clear line of reasoning. Or evidence, because there are facts to support that claim. All right? Now, in big history, what we're asking students to do and what we're teaching them to do is whenever they're meeting a claim of knowledge, we're asking them to apply these claim testers to that. And asking them to say, okay, am I going to accept or reject this claim of knowledge, and why, based on the use of these claim testers, am I going to accept or reject it? Now, this is not to say that one of these is better or worse than the other, okay? What it's doing, first of all, is making that thinking process visible to them. And second of all, it's making them think critically about what they're doing. Now, I don't understand the process of fusion that takes place in the centre of a star. I'm a history teacher. I have no idea what takes place in the centre of a star. I find it intellectually overwhelming to think of the process of fusion that takes place at the centre of a star. But I accept it based on authority. And when you're going through this course, there are going to be many times that students are going to be faced with claims of knowledge that they're going to set based on authority, or they're going to do it based on logic, or they're going to do it based on intuition. Okay? And that's fine. The fact is that they're using it, they're making their thinking visible, and they're thinking critically about what they're doing. And you'll see when we go through the sites, we have lots of scaffolds that help them work through this. So, let's have a look at the site and what that works for and how that functions. So here you'll see the landing page. So this is the landing page for the entry point for the site. Here is the main place and the entry point for how students enter the units. So we have 10 units, structured again, you'll see, based on the thresholds. Now, in terms of the course content, there's a mixture of video, activities, infographics, articles, learning guides and documents. Now, those learning and guiding docs, there's been a great deal of effort put into those based on your feedback. So we've gone through, and all of those have rubrics assigned to them, investigations, problem-based learning activities, and I'll walk you through some of those a little bit later on. Now, this is a big one that I want to come to, literacy in big history. There's a big focus in what we're doing in big history on student literacy and how we focus on that and how we work with students in that. And in terms of the articles, what we've integrated into a lot of the learning activities is this concept of 3 close reads. So when students are getting their articles and they're working with texts, we're looking at doing 3 close reads. First read, a factual read. Read it for the facts. Get the basic facts down. Then do a second read. Read it to get the core concepts. Then do a third read. What's in here that's debatable? Okay? What's in here that's debatable? How can I apply the claim testers to it? All right? Now, the other thing, and I'll show this to you too, and this is one of the things that I find most exciting about this site, is that we understand that there are a variety of learners that are going to be approaching this site with a variety of reading levels. So what we've done now is integrated a facility where you can actually change the reading level of every reading in this site. So you can actually go down and click on a reading level and it will differentiate that reading for your students. So you now have inbuilt differentiation capacity within the course site. And I'm going to show you how that works. It's actually quite stunning. And I might say that was completely based on teacher feedback. Teacher feedback gave us all of these ideas. Every single modification that is made to this site, every single one is based on the input of teachers and student feedback. Every single one. Assessment. Now, the idea of assessment in big history, and this is always a huge ask for teachers, as it should be. The idea of big history assessment is we want to support yet provide flexibility, okay? We understand that this is a worldwide course, okay? So it needs to be able to meet your requirements, whether you're teaching the Australian curriculum, whether you're wanting to do New South Wales AC, whether you're wanting to do AusVels, whether you're doing straight AC, whether you're not doing the AC and you're doing your school-based curriculum. You need to be able to adapt this to whatever your assessment standards are. but we need to provide opportunities for you to do that. So what we've created in here are a range of classroom activities. There are basic midterm, end and pre-tests. There are pre-tests in there as well. There are problem-based learning activities. There's also a major Little Big History activity, unit investigations, level quizzes, and all of them, I'll say, all of them have teacher instructions, student instructions, and rubrics. Okay, so all of them have marking rubrics with them as well. Okay, and they also have rubrics for peer assessment. The other thing we understand and we've heard from teacher feedback is the importance of peer assessment and how much students can benefit from that process. So there are rubrics for that in there as well, and I'll show you those. Just to walk you through a little bit here of the site, when you walk in, you'll see on the rail here, this is how you embed the content and how the content types are facing. So you'll see on your right, when you go in, you'll be able to click open a content item, you'll be able to download it. There'll be a notebook, so students can actually open a notebook and take notes, and there's also transcripts. So there are transcripts for all the videos as well. You'll also see there you have the capacity to mark several videos as optional. So you actually have the ability to tailor this course for your students. So if there's content that you do not want your students to be able to access, you have the capacity to switch that on and off. When you actually move into the format of the lesson, and I'm going to walk through this with you, you will see on the left rail, that's where you've got learning tips. So what we've integrated there is we want this to be grown from teachers, and again, I can't stress this far enough, that teachers are the ones that are going to make this work, and teachers learn best from teachers. So what we do is we gather information from teachers who are actually teaching the course and integrate these ongoing learning tips from teachers into the left rail. So you'll see learning tips from teachers who are teaching the course, then you'll have semi-lesson plans in the middle, and on the right rail, this is auxiliary content. So you'll see photo galleries, fun tips, things that students can work, infographics, so extra stuff there. Here's the reading level again. Also something that's integrated into the videos. We've got a facility, they all have closed captions. So if you've got students with hearing issues, they're all closed captioned. There's also things that we heard teachers were reflecting that it was going too fast. We want to stop in the middle of it, and we need time to reflect from these videos. So what we did was we put in a capacity to be able to click a pause button. So you've got the facility to click pause. So at certain points, the videos will stop and there will be a discussion question come up automatically for your students to stop and you have discussion in class. And you can turn that feature on and off, and I'll show you how it works. In here, when you go into the classroom setup and the survey logs, you will have all your quizzes set out on one side so you can turn them on and off. So you can turn quizzes for your students on and off and monitor where they're going, and when the students do them, their results will feed back to you. Also, you'll see here we have unit logs. Now these are for you to fill out, and that's how we get feedback from you. You tell us, and I know teachers hear a lot, we want your feedback, and sometimes the eyes roll and it's like, yeah, sure you do, but we really do. So the idea is that you fill out the unit logs, and it's like, if you don't like a piece of content, if you go into the unit log and say, you know what, that video really sucks, then we want to know it sucks because we'll get rid of it, okay? We don't want content up there that's not working, it's just wasting space, okay? So that's why we ask you to fill out those unit logs. And then on this rail, program communications, which will help you work with, keep up to date. This is important for in terms of how you join. This is different from in terms of the updated version. You have two ways to integrate your students into this site and join them. Once you set up a class, we call it a period. Period's just a generic kind of word for a class. It's global. We needed a word. That's the one we got. So the idea is once you say select period, you can either email your students individually. So you put in their email addresses and they will get an individual username or password, or you can set up a class code. So you will just get a class code, your students will get that code. When they go to the main page, it'll say join class. They just put in their class code and that will take them to their class that you've set up for them. So if you've made certain content optional, that's what they'll get. Big History community. Okay, I'll go through, we're going to have a whole session on this a bit later, so I'm just going to go into it basically. You should have all received invites to Yammer previously to coming here, so we're going to work on that a bit later. This is a community that's been set up for big history teachers. It hides and it's not just a community like you go in there on Facebook and you have a bit of a chat. A whole load of auxiliary resources relating to big history are housed here. So not just the resources that are on the site, but these are all teacher-created lesson plans. So if you go into those units and you're stuck for a lesson, you can go into that unit and find a plethora of lessons that teachers have created relating to Unit 5, and they're all in there, along with a whole load of other resources. But we'll be going into that into a later session today. And again, community's integrated into the actual course site, so you can jump out into community from the course site at certain points. So, course models. I know this is very interesting to everyone. When we're looking at the ways in which this can be offered, the way in which the course is written, it's basically written for Year 9-10 students for 160 hours. Now, if you are an Australian teacher and you have 160 hours to teach a course, more power to you. You're a very, very lucky teacher, okay? So, we've also got a condensed version, and most teachers are teaching it in 80 hours. That's our standard option for big history, is 80 hours, all right? Now, we've also got, even though it's Year 9 and 10, we find the pivot up and the pivot down is not too hard, okay? So what we have is Years 7 and 8 students are teaching the course. We also have a senior version. We have a Year 11 version, 1 unit Year 11 version that's being taught as kind of like an intro in that, that 1 unit that you've got for kids who might be doing extension in Year 12. It acts as like an intro to maybe extension science or an intro to extension history. Stage 5 elective, that's a very popular option for students. Immersion project based, we've got a lot of schools that are trying to trial it, so they try in that 1 term, especially in Year 10. Now that the school certificate's gone, there's that kind of gap. What am I going to do with my Year 10 kids? Great option. And some schools trial it in that term and then span it out the next year. And we also have a lot of history science integrated. Now, usually it's the 80-hour option, okay? Now, when we look at this, when I show you this site, there's a lot of content there. That doesn't mean that you have to teach all that content, okay? What we say is you need to be teaching every unit in sequence. The level and depth in which you go into those units is completely up to you. So we've got gifted and talented students doing this course, mixed ability learners doing this course, and we've really worked hard to make this course to be able to be differentiated. We've really worked hard at that. You can do course site aligned, so you can teach directly to the course, or like I said, you can do flexible delivery. As long as you teach the units in sequence and you teach every unit, flexibility is really open. We have an online classroom options. We have team teaching across faculties. Another really good reflection is the capacity for big history to bring school faculties together. Okay, the idea that you are going to be able to go, and the idea of teacher as facilitator, the idea that anyone's going to go into big history and kind of be the fountain of all knowledge is just not going to happen. I mean, everyone is going to be out of their depths at some place in big history. And that's the wonderful thing about big history. It's amazing. It really is a journey. And teachers are learning along the way as their students. So they really are like facilitators and co-learners as they're working along. So some reflections, does it work? These are coming from teachers. Student interest is strong, it's unique, it's innovative, it's compelling. They really love the big story. It's the thing about big history is it gives them a framework to hang everything else. Things seem disparate, things seem disjointed, disconnected. Big history gives a frame, and then everything seems to hang, everything seems to make sense. And they take that connection into their other subjects and they seem more connected because they see where it fits. The focus on healthy debate improves engagement, hones critical thinking and presentation skills. When we hear from teachers about what did your students love most about big history, they love the debates, they love the discussions, they love getting into the meat of this, the debates that they can have. Those big questions really inspire them to engage. And we find a lot with students that are disengaged and a lot of low ability students who don't feel connected, that they can actually engage with these questions. Who am I? Where did I come from? Where am I going? Those are questions for all students. and they feel that they are accessible to all students and they have a right to engage with discussions about those regardless of their ability level. And that's a really powerful thing. It's emphasis on interpretation of past events with eyes on the challenges of tomorrow, okay? So it's not just about looking back, it's about empowerment and looking forward, okay? This is not just looking at stars or looking at elements or looking at agriculture or looking at Egypt, okay? It's looking at them, it's looking at me, it's looking at all of those things as part of their story and their story connected to their future. Okay, and that's inspiring. The flexible format. It enables teachers to meet their standards and serving their needs and their students' needs. Okay, so the fact that there's a breadth of content, but it is so flexible at the same time. Strong growth in knowledge, skills, perception, self-capacity, and a wide variety of learning environments. So it can be taught across wherever basically it is that flexible. Here's just a little key statistic that we've seen. This is the growth in people recommending big history to their students. We do surveys from wave 1 to wave 2. So from where teachers started at the beginning of the year to the middle of the year, 8 in 10 teachers would recommend their course to the student from January to July, just from engaging. So what I want to do now is take you through this course and start having a look at what we've got here. So I'm hoping my hyperlink will work, and it will. Now when you go in here, this can sometimes be a bit deceptive. What you need to go into is sign in, okay? And you need to go in under Big History in the Classroom, okay? The other side is the public side. Okay, now, when you go in here, every unit has a unit guide. It will give you, for each unit, the learning outcomes for that unit, the key concepts that you need to learn for that unit, misconceptions and teaching challenges, okay? Teachers have been there before, learn from their experience, all right? So these are things that students have been tripped up on, students struggle with, that teachers have problems with. So you'll see these for each unit. Vocab for the unit, and then you will have lesson content. So this is a content and overview of every activity and every piece of content within that unit. So each unit will give you one of those. You'll also get unit slides. So if you want to use it, this will be a PowerPoint that will give you an overview of the unit that you can use with your students. Again, key content, learning outcomes of the lesson, concepts. It'll look back, so it'll give you, go back to the unit before. What have you learnt before? Threshold, and then what it does is it will go forward. Approaches to knowledge. What's next? So then it'll look forward to Unit 3. So then you can use those in your resource. Now, I want to show you specifically how this reading function works. So if you go into a reader, a text, and this is for all the texts we have. So this is the reading at the biography of Ptolemy. So you'll see here it says, this is a lexile number, reading lexile number. So if you have a look, we'll go down to the text here. Now if I click down here, it'll give me different numbers. If I go to a lower number, so I say 890, the text has changed. Okay, all right? Every text in the site will do that for your students. Okay? Yeah, wow, right? I know. Have you ever seen anything like that before? Yeah, okay. Now, when you go into a lesson, we also have a discussion question notebook So when we say DQ notebook, if you go in here and you look at the videos, so if you open a video, where it says pause at key ideas, if you click on that, and this is just to give you an idea of David's video. I'll let you see a bit of David. Everyone likes to see a bit of David.
What's the biggest question that you could possibly ask? Surely what it might be is, how did everything begin? That's a question that all origin stories ask.
So let's see if I can pull him forward.
Okay.
Is he going to stop?
Beyond them was the perfect realm of heaven.
Yeah. So once it gets to that dot, it will stop. What was Ptolemy's model of the universe? And then you can have that discussion with your students. Now you have the facility to turn that on or off within every video within the whole course. Now, when you go into start lesson, this is what a lesson will look like. You'll get the outline on the other side, on the left rail. Then on the right rail, you will have your lesson vocabulary, lesson outcomes here. Now, when you work through this, every lesson has the same kind of structure. Preparation, purpose, process. So the idea is, and the content is integrated. Sometimes here you'll have key ideas, conceptual thinking, summary. So each of these lessons is like a mini lesson plan integrated. So what you can actually do if you want to go about it is you can cut those out and use them as mini lesson plans in your classes, all right? Now the way this works is if you want, you can go through and just work through these lessons yourself. They're already created for you, okay? They're already created one by one with the content integrated into them. Compare and contrast essay. Download the Big History Writing Guide. So there's a writing guide that goes along with it. You'll see here, pre-writing, outlining, factual writing, telling you how to do all this. All of those resources are there for you. Now, if you don't want to do that, you can then also go in and create the flexible content as you wish. All right? Now, the other thing I wanted to show you, that's what I'm up to. Okay. If we go into Unit 5, Life. Problem-based learning activity. To give you an idea of the rubrics that are involved. So this invent your own species. So when you get an activity, so for this example, we've got the project-based learning activity, you'll get what is project-based learning, full instructions here in a downloadable PDF, teacher directions, lesson plan sequence. Now when the students download this, they'll have student directions. Okay, so there are teacher directions and student directions. Here you have the group directions for the student. Resources, articles needed. And then what I wanted to show you, again, here are the directions, you get the resources. There's your checklist, what they need to do off, possible score that they might get. And here is your rubric. So everything has a presentation rubric, below standard, approaching standard, above standard. And you can use those however you want to be able to mark your work, okay? So everything, they've got presentation rubrics, we've got debate rubrics, there are rubrics for other presentations. And then you'll see here, we have collaboration rubrics. So if they're going to do it within themselves, the group member's name, and they can score each other. Okay, so you know what it's like in group work. One kid does all the work, the rest of them do nothing. So here is how you can do the collaboration rubric as well. And then we have a sample of how you go through a peer review process. So you're actually teaching students to peer review their own work as well. And all of those resources are integrated in there for you. And then again, they've got a feedback table, okay? What did you like? What could be improved? What questions came up? All of those resources are integrated as well. The other thing that you need to see is the investigation, okay? Each unit has an investigation. Now, you can use these if you want. You could use them as your assessment. You could use them to frame each of the units under a question, okay, if you wanted to use inquiry-based learning to do this. Now, the way in which we do these is each unit has an investigation, and this one is how and why have people misused Darwin's ideas, okay? So that's the framing question and problem. Now, each of these are lexile, so these go into reading ideas. Each of these investigations have the same steps. Explore, research, show your thinking, okay? Each 10 of them. So the idea is if they're repeating them, you're actually scaffolding the same process for them over and over again. They're all text-based. So again, researching the investigation library, and it's all based on using the claim testers, okay? So research, show your thinking using the claim testers, okay? Or research, explore your thinking, explore, show your research through the claim testers. Again, document analysis, we provide the library, okay? So there's a library of texts here that are provided for them. Now, if these texts are too hard or if you don't like them, feel free to change them, completely up to you. Then you'll find down the bottom, there'll be a presentation rubric for them to give as well, okay? And you can use one or all of them as you wish throughout the course or however you want to use them. Then you'll have the tests that they can do. If you go up and look at the console, you'll see here, this is where all their quizzes are. So you can turn the quizzes on and off. They're multiple choice quizzes. So I'll go into a quiz for you, just so you get the idea. A big bang. So I always go through these and I think they're going to come back and they're going to think, Tracy's been doing this for so many years, she should surely have a better understanding of the content than this. Submit. Okay, so now that I've submitted mine, I've got 1 out of 5 correct. And I can see where I've gone wrong. It'll tell me what the right answer is. And then that print result, that result can be printed and they can email the results. So those results will be emailed to you. And if you go into your console, and I don't know if Classroom's set up. I'm not in my class, so you can't see mine. This is my class. My husband's in it. He hasn't done much yet. So if you go in there and you'll be able to see how far your students have progressed through the course when they've signed in. So if you assign them homework and you tell them to go into the course site and do this tonight and they haven't done it, you'll be able to check whether they've done that or not, okay? So that gives you a bit of an overview of the site. Yes, so what you can do is you can have, because if you're team teaching, you can have more than one teacher share that actual class experience. So if all you have to do is email tech help, actually that's a very good reminder for what I should show you next. If you go in and you email them, you can have multiple teachers sharing that class and seeing the same thing on that. And you can set up multiple periods, so you can have 6 classes and be running them at the same time through that minor LMS. Now when you go into help, if you go into course help, if you have a question relating to content of any kind, so relating to that, there are experts there, and if you email that, you'll get a response within 24 hours. Tech help, same thing. If there's a video not downloading, if something's not working for you, if you can't get your test results back or your scores, you will get a response within 24 hours. So let's go back to this. So that gives you a basic overview of the site, and I'm going to give you a moment to have a look at that in the next section. So, the other thing that I wanted to bring to your attention. At the Big History Institute, we've got a function, and what we're doing is we're creating membership. We've got a membership function, so we've got associate members. We're bringing together a e-bulletin called Threshold 9, and what that's going to be doing is bringing you together and creating a community of big history big history people who are interested in big history, who are wanting to come together and find more and be a growing community of big historians and big history scholars. Now, we have associate members and student members in the Big History Institute. And what we're offering all of you here today, associate membership is by invitation only. And we're wanting all of you to become associate members of the Big History Institute. Now, when you came in, you actually got a flyer about that. So that will provide you, you'll get Threshold 9 updates, which will give you links to upcoming research and innovations in big history. It'll also give you links and ideas that are things that are happening for students in big history. There'll be student ideas and student links. There'll be professional development opportunities that will be happening. There'll be links to, we'll be profiling associate members and associate member work. We also have academic members of the Institute. We'll be profiling their work. And you'll also be able to express interest in being part of our Teachers Council. We're instituting Teachers Councils across Australia, and we're looking for people from the associate membership to sit on those. And those people will be teachers who obviously are engaged with this course. Our associate membership are those who know the most about how this project works, how this course works, and about big history at the teacher level. And we'll be looking for people to sit on that Teachers Council to help us as our advocates and our advisory board on what teachers are needing, what we're hoping to support them, and help us to support teachers with professional development opportunities and advise us as we move forward in supporting and advocating for teachers as best we can. So we're inviting all of you to become associate members today, and you can get up and sign up here as associate members there. You've all got your Wi-Fi access. And also we're inviting all of your students to become student members, which they'll be provided Threshold 9 updates. They'll get discounted membership at Macquarie University Library, and they'll be first to hear about admission to big history and related events like that.